Are we live? Okay, great. All right, I'm going to call the Hood River City Council meeting to order for January 10th, 2022, new year. You can see there's three of us here on your screen if you're watching us live, but we actually have all the rest of the council joining us remotely by Zoom. So we actually do have a full council this evening and they're coming on now. I'm just going to see if we can get everyone on before I. Fantastic. Everyone's on. I can see everyone. Okay. So I'm going to do the land acknowledgement statement and then we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. As we meet tonight, let us all remember that today we are stewards of the land that has been home to Indigenous peoples for thousands of years, before the recent arrival of the European heritage dominant culture. We honor this land's ancestors as we go about our business today. And we'll do the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, liberty, and justice for all. All right, I have two people that have signed up for business from the audience. One person signed up this afternoon and it was Andrew Spaeth. And, but I believe that person is going to be giving testimony remotely.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi. Yeah, my name is Andrew Spaeth. I'm a resident of Hood River County. I'm here tonight to share remarks with you regarding Congressman Blumenauer's proposal to designate New Wilderness and a national recreation area on the Mount Hood National Forest. I'm an avid recreationist, a wilderness user, and a natural resource professional. I dedicated the last 10 years of my life to working on public lands management issues. The legislative concept and the proposal frame the designations within the context of wildfire resilience. I think it's important to clarify that there's no scientific evidence that suggests that more wilderness or recreation in Hood River will improve wildfire resilience. More than 80% of fires in Hood River are caused by people. Many of those are recreation related. Increased recreation in the valley is likely to increase the number of fire starts that our firefighters are asked to respond to. There is emerging scientific consensus, however, that reducing hazardous fuels through practices such as small diameter thinning and prescribed fire reduce risk of uncharacteristic wildfire and aid in fire suppression and response. The new designations will make it more difficult, if not impossible in some cases, to address hazardous fuels. Wilderness areas do not allow the cutting of any trees, and recreation area designations often come with restrictions and planning requirements that will make it more difficult and expensive for the Forest Service to plan and implement fuels reduction projects. I think there are a few other community values that we need to consider as it relates to this proposal. The Forest Service is the largest single landowner in Hood River County. Most of their ownership is designated as wilderness or recreation area in this proposal, and we're required the agency to develop new management plans. Yet the proposal doesn't ensure additional funding will come with these new requirements. This is an unfunded mandate and will make it harder for the agency to address their current backlog of projects, from ski area improvements to trail realignments and the forest restoration projects that are already urgently needed. Designations are also proposed to occur in areas with existing irrigation infrastructure. Water and agriculture are the foundation of our economic vitality. Restrictions associated with the designations will make it more difficult for irrigation districts to manage their existing infrastructure and upgrade their systems as we work to conserve water and adapt to a changing climate. Finally, the USDA Pacific Northwest Research Station recently published a climate vulnerability assessment for Mount Hood. Scientists are anticipating that we will see a shift from a snow-dominated to a rain-dominated precipitation system and see longer, hotter, drier summers and more wildfires and smoke. Given the unprecedented nature of climate change, we need to avoid locking ourselves into restrictive management approaches. Let's instead embrace adaptive management and ensure that our forests and communities continue to thrive. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. All right. We have White Buffalo Calf, Wananase. Next speaker.
Thank you. White Buffalo Calf Wananase. Happy New Year. This year is off to a better start for me. The first case I told you about where I was wrongfully arrested by Hood River police officer Emma Delancey was dismissed, but I still await one more trial on February 4th to address me not knowing I was driving while suspended and the complications associated with arresting a person with an out-of-state license plus lack of transparency paired with short timelines. If you want to keep up with my story, I have a public Facebook and Instagram account. Search for White Buffalo Calf, all one word, and Wananase, or the notorious WBC. My counselor in Yakima, Washington, worked with his city council to implement a trauma responder program within the city police department. I would like to see a similar program implemented here in Hood River. As a victim of crooked coppery, I think it's imperative to have checks and balances in place to protect our civilians who are done wrong by law enforcement. It seems to happen all the time now, especially if you're in a minority. Currently, there are no mandatory therapy requirements for the servicemen and women who have traumatizing jobs and go untreated. Police officers do not have adequate training in identifying and communicating with our mentally ill, and many officers are mentally ill themselves, go undiagnosed, and are still out there trying to enforce law while sick. What a disaster. My trust has been violated by your city and county law enforcement, and I ask you participate in making necessary changes to renew my faith in your government and the safety of your visitors and residents. At this point, I feel obligated to tell people that it is not safe to come here. It's very much a risk to visit Hood River, Oregon, and I discourage tourists from coming until the police corruption is under control. And then lastly, I wanted to ask, who is responsible to clear the 2nd Street stairs? I'd like if you would enforce the maintenance of that staircase when it snows. I know a lot of people like to use it. Is it true there is a city ordinance that requires people to shovel their sidewalks in front of their homes and businesses? Or is that a rumor? Thanks.
Thank you very much. I think the best thing to do on all those questions is to address our city manager, because she knows exactly who is supposed to do what, where, and when. So I think that if you would just get a hold of her and she could answer those questions for you.
Okay.
Specifically.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, we have a presentation this evening on our annual fiscal audit from Tara Camp.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members of the City of Hood River. Thank you for having me on this evening. My name is Tara Camp, and I'm a partner with Polly Rogers and Company. And we are the financial statement auditors for the City of Hood River and the Urban Renewal Agency. And so I'm here this evening to present our report on the June 30, 2021 financial statement audit and results. And so what I'll do is go over the governing body letter that came along with the audit. It's a nice letter that summarizes everything we're required to communicate. And I can take any questions along the way or after that. So on page 1 of the letter, we cover the purpose of the audit. And for the city and the agency, the purpose was twofold. We performed the financial statement audit, and that is where we test and assess the financial statements prepared by management in order to determine if they're fairly stated. And secondly, we perform the Oregon Municipal Audit Law Minimum Standards Compliance Procedures, and that's where we look at many different laws and regulations in order to determine if the city is in compliance. And on page 2 of the letter, we summarize the results. And the results for the city and the agency are very good. For the financial statement audit, we issued an unmodified opinion on the financial statements, and that is a clean opinion with no reservations. For state minimum standards, we found no exceptions or issues requiring comment. and we had no management letter issued. If there were items that arose in the audit that were considered significant deficiencies or material weaknesses, we would issue a management letter to communicate those things with you. Further down on page 2, we encountered no difficulties in performing and completing our audit. The City of Hood River staff does an excellent job with the financial accounting and reporting. Monica and Will are wonderful to work with. They're highly professional, and they provide us with everything needed to complete the audit in a timely manner. We also had no disagreements about accounting or auditing issues, and we'd communicate those to you if we did. And then further down in the letter, we have a section on future accounting and auditing items coming up. And it's good to be aware of those because as those are implemented in the near future, they'll definitely require more staff time, and there'll probably be some changes to some future audit reports. So it's good to be aware of those. So overall, as you can see, excellent results. And I'd be happy to take any questions if you have any.
Thank you, Tara. Appreciate it. Does anyone have any questions? I'll see if anyone here. No one here. Anyone on Zoom have any questions?
Thank you, Tara.
Councilor Haney?
Yes, just very briefly. If I'm understanding correctly, this review is at the audit level and not what sometimes is called a compilation or review. You applied the full audit standards, the higher standards?
Yes, absolutely. That's correct.
Thank you.
All right. It looks like no other questions. Let's see, our finance director that is there, Will, did you have anything?
No, I just wanted to thank Tara and her team for all their work. Also give special credit to Monica. She really stepped up and took on a lot more of the workload of the audit this year than in prior years. Kind of everyone stepping up while we've had some staff turnover, and it went really well. And just wanted to give a little extra attention to Monica. So that's it.
Thanks to Will and his team too. Good work. It's not nothing to have such a clean report, so that's awesome.
Absolutely. Thank you, Will. Thank you, Monica. She's here in the audience.
Good evening.
Thank you, Tara. Appreciate it. All right. We don't need to make a motion or anything on that. That was informational. So we have the second presentation is Will Norris, Kevin Liberty, and Community Development Partners. Rand Road.
Great. Thank you, Mayor McBride and councilors. The cover sheet for this item begins on page 4 of tonight's packet. In November, the city selected Community Development Partners, CDP, along with Columbia Cascade Housing Corporation as the preferred developer for affordable housing at 780 Rand Road. We're currently in a 6-month exclusive negotiation period. As we've discussed previously, development of affordable housing on the site is dependent upon funding sources, including State of Oregon, Local Innovation and Fast Track, or LIFT funds, which are expected to cover a significant portion of project costs. The LIFT application deadline is anticipated in early April. In preparation for LIFT and other funding applications, we are working on a purchase option agreement right now. The city is also initiating a zone change on the property from low-density residential to high-density residential. Tonight, we're joined by development team members, including Jessica Woodruff, the Director of Development at Community Development Partners, Joel Madsen, Executive Director of the Columbia Cascade Housing Corporation, Kevin Volk, Principal of Holst Architecture, and Sergio Palaroni, Director, I believe also Hannah Lopez of the Center for Public Interest Design at Portland State University. They have a PowerPoint presentation for you tonight with information about site planning and programming, funding assumptions, key city responsibilities, and community engagement. City staff and the development team members are available to respond to questions from councilors tonight. And Will Norris and I expect to be back in front of the council with a draft purchase option agreement for you on January 24th. So I'll turn it over to Jessica and her team. Thank you.
Great. And just one thing, when we start the PowerPoint presentation, because we have so many people on Zoom this evening, if you're not presenting, so if the counselors could turn off their cameras during the presentation. So because we have too many heads on there, we can't see anything. And then as soon as we get to questions, then we'll turn everyone back on after the PowerPoint presentation. Thanks.
Hi, this is Jessica Woodruff, Director of Development for CDP. I just want to make sure I've kind of tracking your process as I get this going for our team. So should we be the ones sharing the PowerPoint presentation? And then I assume you want all of the presenters to be on camera when we do the presentation?
That's correct. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay.
You know,
thanks.
if all the presenters are kind of overlapping the presentation, we can't see it, I'll let you know, but we assume they won't be.
Okay, great. Yeah, so thank you again, Jessica Woodruff, CDP. Our team is really excited to be here tonight with our first opportunity really to speak with the city council members. And we're going to try to go through the presentation relatively quickly, just in case you are aware of a number of these items, and then try to leave more time for us to have Q&A at the end. So why my computer is not working? There we go. Like I said, I introduced myself, so I'll go ahead and let the rest of the team members, including Hannah, introduce themselves. Joel?
Good evening, Mayor McBride, council members. Joel Mattson, the Executive Director of Columbia Cascade Housing Corporation and Mid-Columbia Housing Authority. And I'll pass it to Sergio.
Okay, sorry. Hi, Sergio Pallaroni, Director of the Center for Public Interest Design at Portland State University and longtime collaborator with Community Development Partners.
Hannah?
Hi, everyone. I'm Hannah Lopez, and I'm an anthropologist, and I work with Sergio at the Center for Public Interest Design. And I'll give it back over to Jessica.
So Community Development Partners, we are a mission-driven developer, and we focus on affordable housing, and we do some commercial development as well, but all community development. We are a certified B corporation, which means we are a for-profit company, but we are mission-driven, and we balance profit with outcomes. We have done a lot of work, both our organization, but also the development staff that we have. We've built over 2,000 affordable housing units. And, one of the things that we, heard kind of loud and clear from the city when we were going through this process was to be able to deliver on a lot of city goals. And we felt like our team, with Joel, he'll speak to this as well, that collectively we could really bring a lot to bear that the city was looking for. And we have a deep experience with affordable housing finance and feel like this is a really great opportunity and that we can definitely get it done. Joel?
Thanks, Jessica. And on behalf of Columbia Cascade Housing Corporation, we're really excited to be co-developing with community development partners and bringing our nonprofit experience in the region and our mission of providing affordable housing and economic opportunity to this development on Rand Road. Some of you may know us, but again, we're a local affordable housing provider aimed to address the housing needs in the 5-county rural service area of the Gorge. So that includes Hood River, Wasco, and Sherman counties in Oregon, as well as Klickitat and Skamania counties. We also administer home ownership programs, in addition to the portfolio of 389 apartment homes that we have in our portfolio. Also, we're looking forward to engaging with our community partners in our team here in the promotion and provision of resident services particularly at this property.
So as we were preparing for the interview, we talked a lot about what we were collectively excited about with this opportunity to build affordable housing in Hood River. So we just wanted to share that with you. We are excited about beyond just affordable housing. We're going to do a lot of work around arts, equity, and sustainability. So we look forward as we get deeper into the design and the community engagement portion, which we'll talk about later tonight, is to talk about how we might meet some of those over time. I'm going to turn it over to Kevin.
Thanks, Jessica. So we wanted to highlight a few of our programmatic and design thoughts going into the proposal. We talked a lot about creating a connection with the natural environment in the surrounding neighborhoods through, of course, the trails and the existing park system. And you'll see in the design where we focus on a linear park within the project. As Jessica mentioned too, there's a high focus on sustainability and resiliency that we'll be bringing to the project. There's within the project a dedicated community building for site operations. And it also becomes it's not just for the development, but it's for the larger community. And which contains also resident programming. We're providing a mix of housing types from townhomes, walk-ups, and mid-rise. So there's a variety of scales and to suit a variety of needs. There's also a mix of unit types. So studios, 1s, 2s, and even up to 3-bedroom units. And then we're exceeding the parking ratio of 1.5 stalls per unit. That's the code minimum for the multifamily, 2 to 1 for the townhomes. And we've have a newer site plan than the RFP that we'll show in a slide or two that exceeds that 1.5 ratio. I know that was a concern in the previous council session regarding this proposal. So it's something we've been addressing. So here are some quick site diagrams. We won't spend a lot of time, but as I mentioned, one of our initial thoughts and focuses for the development was the area around the wetlands and the potential for the park that can be created around those wetlands. So the left-hand diagram shows that park with the buildings situated around it. And so we've very much used the existing topography and the existing natural setting to inform where buildings could go and how they would be oriented. The middle diagram shows what we initially assumed was a setback requirement for the wetlands. I think there's still some investigation going into that. With that assumption, you could see how there was a sort of, a need to stay away from that, and then therefore helped really focus where the buildings would go. I think if that goes away, that setback at least, then there's more flexibility around the site, which is great. And then on the far right, we see just a simple sun diagram, and with the intent that our building orientation is focused on being able to provide a great deal of solar power, solar panels on the roofs. Our roof forms right now are really just to show some diversity of form and instead of flat roof, but the idea is that we're going to maximize solar panels on the roof. So when we truly get into the building design, this will be a strong focus in addition to the orientation that we have here. And so here we're showing an updated site plan from the RFP process. We've got townhomes along the north side of the property, along Wine Country Avenue. We have a community building then on the corner of Wine Country and what becomes a private drive connecting parking lots to the south. And that is also a potential for connection to Max's Place in the future, as we've been talking about. Here, we're currently showing 177 parking spaces to go along with the 107 units. And so that gives us a 1.65 to 1 parking ratio. It increases parking along the community building on the private drive. It also doesn't count the public parking that's along Wine Country Avenue that's also adjacent to the community building. So we've added parking to exceed the minimum requirements, and we've provided additional parking near the community building that we thought was an important thought that came out of the previous council session. Here you can see the mix of unit types: 22 townhomes, 28 3-bedrooms, 55 twos.
And Kevin,
18
I just am realizing, I
Oh, yeah.
think there's an error on this unit mix. And I think later, and we will talk about it, but we actually are targeting 109 units, 129 units, sorry. So I think there's something a little bit off about some of our slides. I apologize on that. And we can clarify that with the city afterwards, but I think we've been doing so many different scenarios that these got a little bit confused. So, and maybe this unit mix actually is right, but I know there's just something off on the numbers, and wanted to make sure everyone is aware that we're working on 129 units.
Yeah, thank you, Jessica. I apologize. I think I said 107, and that doesn't include the townhomes where there's 22. So that would be 129 total. Apologize for that. So a couple other things on this slide. You can see on the south edge of the property where the West Side Trail is identified. At the time of the RFP submittal, we didn't have knowledge of the easement that's currently in place. We think that there's some, we're going to have the ability to meet the easement while still getting our parking in there. So there's obviously the intent of keeping the West Side Trail connection across the south side of the site. And then there's a lot of work to be done, I think, about how that trail integrates into the rest of the site. But this was a starting point, and we know that that's a key feature that we want to maintain. And then I think we could probably go to the next slide where we talk about some amenities. And so just to hit on some of the amenities that we're providing: resident services within the community building, along with teaching space in that community building, in a kitchen that can be a teaching kitchen as well as a community kitchen. And there's also classroom and meeting space within that. Public artwork across the site, both at the community building and potentially throughout the trail network. We've got covered outdoor space connected to the community building as well, and a public park playground adjacent to it. In addition, there will be a fitness center within the taller 4-story building that's at the south side of the site. And then I know that there was some question about laundry and the mix of laundry, and so we tried to clarify, but we currently have a variety of laundry facilities across the site. So there's some shared facilities in the community building. There's also some shared facilities in the 4-story building, and as well as individual in-unit laundry in some of the bigger units. So there's a mix to meet different needs and to meet some space allocation requirements. So. And then here, we're just really trying to show the scale of the development and how it steps down from the south to the north. And so building is on the south side. It includes some of the lower buildings. It's also sort of tucked into that hillside that's at the north, the south edge of the property. And this is very sort of schematic level as far as building detail. So there's a lot to be done with community involvement and outreach and the furthering of the design process to really investigate what these buildings look like and what form they take. But this gives us a sense of the scale of the development and the scale of the individual buildings within it. And then here is an image outside of the community building. So in front of us is the community space with the covered outdoor area. In the distance are the townhomes, and then the playground is in the foreground, which ties into the wetlands that's to the right and extends to the east. So the idea is that there's a linear park that has the potential of growing into something that could happen further across multiple properties, but here creates a very generous outdoor space on the site that we have. So it's a great potential for that space around the wetlands, and then between the community building and the 3-story walk-ups that are to the south of the park and playground.
So this slide actually is one too that I would note that there was a typo in the slide that went to the city council packet. And so this is the right unit mix that the one I'm showing, because I fixed that. So in terms of affordability levels, we are planning for 20 units at 30% of area median income, and 109 units at 60% area median income. One of the things we want to talk a little bit about tonight is the rental versus home ownership concept. So we had designed the townhomes, which are listed at the top of this chart, as being able to be either, like the design wouldn't change, but the home ownership versus rental could. But what we presented to the city was the fact that when we went through our due diligence to get prepared, there was a large financing gap on the home ownership. So the way the state funding rules work for rental and home ownership have some similarities, but also some real differences. And one of the challenges of the state program is it works actually pretty well for affordable rental, and it doesn't work exceptionally well for home ownership. So we were highlighting for the city that there would need to be additional city investment to fill that gap on home ownership. So at least what we liked about this concept is it could go either way. And we understand that the city wants to move quickly to get some affordable housing up and built. And the cleanest path forward to try to get housing built on the quicker side, you'll see in our timeline, it still takes a while, but is to put in for the LIFT application that's coming up for 100% rental. So we've talked about a lot of different scenarios, but I wanted to make sure it was clear that that's what we're expecting to do now, and look forward to talking to you more about that tonight. So what's an interesting dynamic of our world, and what we're happy to work with the city in partnership on, is that even from the time that we submitted to you all for review, things have changed in our world. There is a couple interesting things that have happened. One is the state of Oregon's private activity bonds have changed dramatically. And another major issue, which is due to that, is that the state is no longer allowing you to pair ag worker housing tax credits with private activity bond deals. So when we submitted, we had $1.9 million worth of source from the ag worker housing tax credit, which would mean both a resource to the deal, but also our ability to set aside some units specifically for farm workers. That no longer is possible. And what I just wanted to share with you all is it's not uncommon for those kinds of changes to occur year after year, and we can still make this deal work. Sort of the simplistic way to do that is to replace the 1.9 million with $1.9 million of additional lift. That's possible. There's also other possibilities we'll be exploring to try to do the best we can do in terms of scoring, but I just wanted to make sure everyone is sort of aware. This has already been a change. There will be more changes, but we're confident that our two organizations as co-developers can sort through that, and that this can be a really successful LIFT application. In terms of key city responsibilities, we, through the RFQ process, we're trying to be really clear on the what we both thought was possible from the city, but also what we saw as the support we would need from all of you to make the process work. So we do need a rezone of the property. That's a requirement of the LIFT application. You have to have appropriate zoning. We do expect that the land would come to us for free or a very nominal cost to aid in the infrastructure improvements. We were anticipating $500,000 in Hood River construction excise tax. I will note, because it's not on here, but we actually are also assuming the same amount from the county, that we would have a reduction to our SDCs, and that we would have your support in the pursuit of our funding applications. Kevin, can you talk a little bit about zoning?
Sure. Quickly, just what we looked at as far as the best zone that we thought this site should go to, which was the R3. This is a comparison of what those with the different zones R3, C1, and C2 provide you as far as building height and unit density and those things. We've made a recommendation in the RFP for the R3 zone change, which is, I believe, where things are going with the city currently. And I think it provides the right enough units and limits, obviously, the use and on the site as far as residential property, and we seem to be able to meet all of the other requirements pretty easily. So that was a great recommendation, I think.
So in terms of timing, also things have shifted slightly since we submitted our response to the city. Most notably, we have more clarity from the state on their funding application timeline, and we know it will be released sometime later this month, and then we will have to submit it in early April. We expect that they would then let us know if we had a successful funding application or not in August. And if awarded, we would be pushing hard to start construction in August of 2023 and hopefully have units available for move-in as early as the end of 2024, could potentially be into early 2025. And what's pretty normal in our industry is that if you're not awarded, you can tweak your application some and resubmit the following year. So we're going to do everything in our power to get this funding application to be successful the first try, but we also always do try to work in the thought process of what if you have to wait another year. And then I also wanted to turn it over to CPID to talk a little bit more about community engagement. What we're thinking right now on that timing is that we will be working really hard with city staff to try to get this funding application in April. So then we're thinking that, but then we'll sort of have to sit and wait to find out what happens in August. So we're thinking about really starting to focus on getting community engagement going from that period of getting it started in May, when we have a little bit of downtime with our funding application. And like I said, I'll let Sergio and Hannah talk more about that.
Thank you, Jessica. Sergio Palaroni and Hannah, please Hannah step in as need. And so what we at the Center for Public Interest Design, we're actually a public advocacy organization. Our role is to advocate for kind of healthy communities and healthy built environments, and for the rights and opportunities for communities to have that, and health and well-being, as well as kind of equity across all the issues. And so we've had a kind of a long-term relationship with community development partners, because we've been taking on this kind of idea that these communities should be diverse and they should include up many generations, and they shouldn't be just kind of spaceships that arrive with, all young families and they overwhelm the system, but that they represent a kind of diversity that you might find in community. And so, and the other thing we've been very strongly advocating is the kind of idea that you don't want a community to arrive and not feel like it's woven into the fabric. So our process that Jessica was just mentioning is starting in May. It's going to be the beginning of a long conversation with you, the staff, community organizations, the assets, and that you have in the community in terms of community organizations, schools, the whole system, so that we can inform the design that Kevin and his group at Holst are going to be taking on. So by the time the building comes in and it's populated, the building will have assets the community can benefit from, as well as the community the new residents are going to benefit from. So for instance, you might have a classroom which is offering early education that's missing in the community, but we can offer or in the community center. Or there might be courses in local agriculture, and they can include elders and young, and et cetera, and benefit both education and sustainability of your community. So these are the things we hope to flesh out through this conversation, and then bring you, as we begin to identify groups and interests and the character of the community, bring those groups in the conversation with the design team so that we can get you connected in a way with the design team that you will never have experienced before. I think this process has been unique, and we call it asset-based community development process, because we look at the assets, we look at the liabilities and needs of the community, and based on that, we create a framework for how the community we're designing should look and feel, and the opportunities that it should have, and even the assets, what things we can offer, so that when it's finally populated, it's woven into the community and it feels part of the community, not as strangers arriving. So Hannah, I'm sure that I've left a lot out here. Do you have anything you want to add to this?
No, I mean, just the nitty gritty of that, what that would look like from our end is engaging with local agencies, current residents of Hood River, and then identifying potential partnerships for the site and the development and what that could look like, and then bringing those entities together and discussing that further and identifying synergies and possible collaboration opportunities through various, interviews and workshops. And that's kind of what our role is. And then we build those relationships on behalf of CDP and then pass those on to CDP once our kind of role is over. And essentially creating kind of this intergenerational community that really fits right into Hood River and isn't just this, weird thing that's sticking out. We want to really create a cohesive community.
Yeah, thanks. And I might note, and I'm sure Joel would be happy to answer questions about this later if you have any, but just for people to maybe sort of better understand what Joel and I have been talking about is they will provide the on-site traditional resident services. And then part of what CPID is talking about is, like, for example, we have a project in St. Helens where there are, other service providers in the community. We are going to build a community room or kind of a community center type space that there are opportunities, say, for the library that's already existing there to potentially bring a service to the community on site, right? So I just kind of want to make sure that's connected there. There will be Joel's organization providing sort of the direct tenant services. And then there's also this really collaborative process we try to take with the community where we integrate with them as much as possible. And they know we're coming and we know what's out there. And CPID has helped us make some really exciting connections that we believe, as Sergio said, that once we sort of really show up, there'll be staff from CDP and CCHD that are sort of on the ground doing sort of our normal work, but hopefully we're doing much more than that and providing something that's much more community connected.
Thank you, Jessica.
Yeah, and then last, I kept this slide. This is from our original presentation to the city. This is city staff asked us this question, and I thought it was just probably helpful for you to hear as well what our key concerns about the project. And although we know more today than we knew then, I think these still resonate for me. That we ran into the challenge that the LIFT homeownership funding was insufficient to cover the gap of what it would cost to build that housing in relation to what the sales price of those houses would be. Talking with the city about the road locations and how to coordinate those with the existing contours and grading is a bit of a challenge we need to dig into more. And we're just now working to get the experts on our team to help us do that. And then last is making sure we really understand the implications of the wetlands on site. And also we are working to get those professionals on our team now. And our goal would be to have a lot of additional information prior to going in for that state funding application. So we're trying to move pretty fast on getting that additional information and working collaboratively with the city staff to make sure we are getting some of these details pinned down that could change what we've just shown you. And then we would look forward to coming to you as much as you're interested in terms of hearing updates or even having people participate in our community engagement work. We'll be going through more of the site planning and the building design. So that's the end of our prepared presentation, and we're happy to take whatever questions you have for us. And I can stop sharing so we can see people.
Thank you, team, for your great presentation. Good to put some faces to the name that we've selected. Great, everyone's back on. I'm sure that there may probably be some questions. I'm gonna start here, and then I'm gonna go on to the Zoom. Anything, Megan?
Hi, thank you all. I guess my first one is, timeline of you're submitting the grant application and then you're going to start community engagement. So I guess I'm wondering if you could dive into a bit more, like what information needs to be already decided for the grant application, and then what obviously is not in that then the community has input on.
Yeah, that's a really great question. So what we really need, what's sort of, some of the really important pieces, like I mentioned, we need the appropriate zoning, we need site control, which would be that option agreement that we're speaking with the city. Those are what the state calls threshold items, and their kind of readiness to proceed, right? They want to make sure you have a real deal. And then otherwise, the main thing that's tough to change, right? So this is what we're really focused on, is the unit mix and the funding strategy. So they don't expect us to have our design done. But they do expect, right, if we come in with 129 units at the, mix of 30% and 60% area median income households, that is fixed. And so we need to have, like what Kevin has done, we need to have the massing, the parking, the site plan, the general site plan. It does not have to be done by any means, but we have to be within the ballpark enough that what we committed to the state is viable. And then once we get awarded, then we really want, so that would be if we're awarded in August, we would want to move really quickly through advancing design. So that's what we want to be sort of thoughtful and strategic to move this forward. We want to use that time between May and August to have, community engagement where there's no real timeline pressure, but community engagement will extend beyond that. So we have purposely built a timeline that allows the community to actually, really influence design and site planning. Because like I said, the state cares about a lot. They don't get into design.
That's very helpful. Thank you. I think that's my immediate ones. I'll maybe come back around, but.
Okay, thanks, Megan. Mark?
Sure. Thanks a lot. It's fun to see you again, Joel. Hi. And I would also say that applied anthropologist is like the coolest title I've heard in a while. So that's pretty nifty. Thanks. I'm really excited we're doing this, and I wish us all luck in getting the funding and stuff. So knock wood. Townhomes. It was my understanding that one of the things we were going to entertain was removing them from the plan and them being done, as a later phase or a different land trust or something. Is that part of your math at all? Or is that a complete, I don't know what you're talking about, so.
That isn't what we've been talking about. And I don't know, Will, if you want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, well, we touched on it briefly, but it was pretty clear that it was going to ruin the economics of the project if they didn't have the north side of wine country. So we are continuing to look at more land. We're in active negotiations with the neighboring property owners to see how that can be in play. And so I think that's where our ownership opportunity is going to be, is probably going to be in a new property acquisition. As Jessica talked about, the rental units are really the only thing that pencils for those townhomes within our current budget constraints. and the pro forma has been built. And Jessica, maybe you can talk a bit more about how the pro forma is built for the development as a whole, and really is about 7 acres is the pro forma and the economies of scale.
Yeah, I think part of what we had talked about is that, yeah, for us, there is a point where you need enough units to make all of the soft costs and all of the infrastructure costs work out. And also the way that we are talking about doing some of the improvements, when you put all of that into the pro forma, and at one point, I think we'd even talked about even a bigger deal could have been a potential. But when we took all of those things into account, what I understood what talking with city staff was, we could make the 129 unit work really well for this funding opportunity. And then the city could look for future opportunities for home ownership opportunities. And we, just to be really clear, I think CDP and CCHC are still really interested in being part of a home ownership deal. We just couldn't make it work here on this timeline with this individual funding source. But we also understand that there could be a different developer that would do future home ownership.
And then related to the townhouses, since they're 100% rental, what's the income threshold for those? Is that 60 as well?
Correct. So for what we're proposing, yeah, everything would be 60% and below, some 30s and some 60s.
Right, in the townhouse section.
Oh, in the townhouses, exactly. That's a great question. Let me look. I'll answer that before we're done, but I want to make sure that
even
right.
Just someday is fine. Might be a question for Will. Is the county CIT, is that something they've already agreed to? I think city CIT is a fairly controlled thing, but.
Right. No, they haven't yet. But that's what it's for. And they have sufficient CET available. What we will be doing with this purchase option agreement is basically getting the skeleton of knowing what the funding gap is. We'll still have a long time, maybe even years, to fill in and get commitments from the various parties before we have to actually write a check. So that is not the critical path at this time, but I'm very hopeful. Everything I've heard from the county is they pass CET to fund affordable housing, and this is right in the kind of right in the target area for them.
Cool. And then being a wee bit of a Lorax, there's some significantly old oak trees on the site, and I would really encourage you to move things around as needed to maximize how many of those stay, because those are things that make a community, and that's that's the kind of stuff that I think sort of makes or breaks something like this. If it's scorched earth, it's gonna feel like scorched earth for a long time, but if we can pull those things in, please do. And then Kevin made a possibly Freudian slip of saying you're going to attempt to keep the trail. I would say that, please make sure you keep the trail. It's a super important connection for the community. We're talking about multimodal connections to all parts of town, and making this a not a little island, but connected to everything, and that trail system is very important for that. So make sure we do that as well. And then you already answered design flexibility between application and public comment. So thanks. That's all I got.
Okay, and I will just I was able to check, and that we have made the assumption that the townhomes serve 60% AMI households.
Thanks.
All right,
I was just going to apologize for the trail mix-up. Yes, we had full intention of keeping the trail, just to be very clear.
All right, other counselors that are virtual tonight. Why don't you guys put up your hand if you've got Gladys is her hand up. Go ahead, Gladys.
Hello, all. Thank you so much for being here today. Jessica, I have been following your work, the Rockwood Village Apartments, and Sergio, you brought up some fabulous points around a healthy built environment. So here go my questions. Given the fact that we will eventually change the zoning for this lot, would that also include some sort of family daycare, food cart hookups, as you have done in some of your other projects, to ensure that we are bringing the services to people where they need it most? And then also talking about maybe potentially entrepreneurship ideas for food carts to make they can have a business out of this in the area that they live. And also the federally qualified health center here in the area will have mobile medical units that will be able to go out. So again, bringing the services where people need it most, and that's closest to their home. Another great point that Councillor Zandmiller brought up is multimodal, and that being the fact that these units won't be built for another couple of years, I guess I'd like for us all to think about, in regards to parking, if the point is that we'll eventually be better connected to transportation, should we maximize more units versus parking spaces in that sense? And I'm not saying, it's just a comment of like, I'd like for us to think about that, but thinking about what other sort of built environment we can connect, and that being transportation and access to the existing trails that are there. Other than that, I love seeing this coming to life and us getting together and having these conversations. Hannah, I wanted to ask you specifically, you had talked a little bit about the process of what the public input is going to look like, and you had mentioned that there was going to be a series of potential workshops. Does that include specific focus groups that maybe other agencies are helping you connect to, or can you just talk a little bit more about the process, please?
Yeah, so we essentially do a snowball sampling approach for each community that we work in. So we would connect probably with Joel and his team to just kind of get a sense of who we should be connecting to initially for Hood River. And then from there, we kind of ask for recommendations, kind of that snowball approach to more connections for organizations, community members, current residents of affordable housing. And then after that initial process, we look to bring together kind of different workshops and focus group opportunities to bring, you know, certain organizations to the table with the designers, certain residents together with the designers, so that they can have a direct line of communication and direct input on the process and what those spaces could look like for their services that they would provide.
Thank you so much for your time.
I wanted to just add one thing in relation to your comments about Rockwood and Village, a project we have in Gresham, and how some of those things might relate here. Again, Joel's organization will be providing the direct services, so he could speak to that better. But you said a couple of things that I think might be helpful for me to connect the dots for this group. So for example, the mobile medical or the transportation, I think the work that CPID is doing in partnership with Holst and all of us is going to help. Some of the things we've done in other projects, for example, is say it's too early for bus service, like the bus provider is just not going to do it yet. We still might work in for the future. Where would the bus go? You know, how, like we might just go ahead and plan some of that in mobile medical. What might they need to come on site and actually serve the residents who live here? And then we can build that into our site planning or potentially into our community center. So those are the perfect types of things that we actually could really benefit from this group sharing some of those ideas with us, because we can be thinking about the day it opens, but we also, not only are Joel and I both very much on the same page that we want this to be a highly sustainable development. I mean, this is a real gem of a community in Oregon. We know that there are struggles we're already having with climate change. So we don't want to just be thinking about sustainability, but also resiliency. And those are some of the things we'll want to work together on. So it's something that we're all really collectively, I think, proud of, that it's a really safe and welcoming and fun place for everyone to be. So I thought that you brought up a few things that are really interesting. Food carts, I haven't even thought about food carts here. So that's something I will definitely have to put on the list to think about.
if I may add to that, Sergio Pelleroni, in Rockwood, it was interesting because Rockwood is a very embattled community, and we wanted to create we created basically the most important public space in Rockwood, which is safe and protected, and the community itself has created. I think here in Hood River, we really kind of seeing we want to connect our community to outwardly rather than protect it from the outside. And I think the intermodal thing is very important to us. And as is like going back to the earlier comment, we've been working very closely with Sistis and John Miller and a series of people known throughout the state for the protection of the Oak Savannah and the Oak system. So we really kind of not only want to protect ecology, but we want to connect people's education to the ecology, because we want to create a next generation of people who are ecologically minded as well as civically minded in this community. And how you design the community can impact the community you'll get in how your community at large will grow. So, we want to contribute to that, to the mission of Hood River, which is like unique. So anyway.
I think I saw Tim's hand up. Is that, you had it up earlier, is that right, Tim? Okay,
Sure.
Everyone had their hand up. Let's go with
Yeah.
Tim next, then we'll go with Jessica and then Eric.
Well, thanks, Mayor. I think after hearing the responses to the previous counselors' questions, I'll say that, I really like everything that I'm hearing. I like the community involvement thing. I like the sustainability focus. So I don't necessarily have any questions other than to say that I'm just super excited about where this is heading. It's really kind of checking all the boxes for me. So I really, really appreciate all that's gone into this. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim. Jessica?
Yes, and thank you. It's great meeting all of you. I'm really excited for this team, especially hearing everything tonight. On the transit, I'll just add that even if there's not a bus stop there for a route, that there's a lot of dial-a-ride that's happening. So transit-oriented development for even just thinking about where the buses are going to go would be great. And one of the things I heard was that we would need the massing done by the April application. And one of my comments in the prior meeting, and it sounds like you guys listened to that, so that's great, was just some concerns about the size of that 4-story building fitting in with the neighborhood behind it. So I think, and it sounds like that would be kind of decided by the time the application goes in. So I think maybe I would like to see, and I saw some of that in the design, trying to show how maybe with that hill behind it, it's not quite so gigantic. So anyway, I think just some more information about how that might be able to fit in would be of interest to me, at least. Thank you.
Eric, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for everyone who's presented tonight. As someone remarked, I'm having the same sensation that it's starting to feel real, and that's a very pleasing feeling. And I heard Sergio talk about this kind of broader sort of community atmospherics that he's listing for and trying to tap into, and seeing Joel's face on the screen, someone who's presented to council many times on affordable housing. If I could, and I think my goal would be to just say this once and joyfully move on, but I feel that there's sort of a broader moment here that deserves just a comment. And it has to do with Morrison Park. That was frankly a topic that created a lot of community frictions. It had a lot of good elements in our community working against each other in a way that really wasn't positive. And yet here we are. And I guess as someone who was involved in that community discussion in a way that, for example, pitted me against Joel Mattson, which was not enjoyable, it just seems that there's a larger moment to just reflect here, where it is starting to feel real. And the larger moment is that we just have a united council and we have a united community to score what I think is a real win for affordable housing in Hood River. So I'm just pleased with what I'm hearing. I think the broader moment is that we really have a united community behind all you people. So I think you should feel good about that. And I guess substantively, the only part I would add would be, you know, we do have a lot of artists in our community, and there might be an opportunity in here somewhere for some public art. And it just seems like that is probably not the most important thing, but seeing that open space, it just called out the possibility of that. So I would just mention that as well. But thank you for what everyone is doing. And I'm just pleased with where the community is with this.
Thank you, Eric. The only questions I have, I think some of the questions have already been asked that I was going to ask. But when it comes down to the funding gap, a couple things. When you apply for the LIFT funding, you would be applying for the funding for 129 units. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And with that, you know, this 1.9 that now is gone because we can't use that. I think we had, if I can remember correctly, it was about a $1.5 million gap originally. And this 1.9 would be on top of that unless the LIFT funds can backfill that to some extent. Is that correct?
So I have to do the math in my head, but I think maybe the way I can answer that and be most accurate is in relation to that slide we showed, right? We've made the assumptions that the land is free, that we have some construction excise tax support from both the city and the county of roughly $1 million, and then some SDC credits. So you're probably in the right ballpark if those are the items you're calling gap. And then the $1.9 million of the ag worker housing tax credit that we no longer can go in on, we know we can request LIFT for that amount. We want to try to limit as much as possible asking for more LIFT, just because it can change our score. We still think we can be successful if we just ask for 1.9 million more of LIFT. But one thing we will do as lead developer is we will also research other potential options, not from the city, but even other opportunities, just to set ourselves up to be as successful as possible with that LIFT application. So just kind of underscore that we're not looking for the city to fill that. We can definitely, no problem. We can ask the state for quite a bit more LIFT. It's really just a question of scoring that we'll play around with. And the state has not yet published the application. That'll come out in January. We know how much we'll be able to ask for, but we don't exactly know how the points will work out. And so that's just something we do as a strategy. We've won 4 LIFT awards to date. And so we just know it's a highly competitive resource. And so we'll put our best foot forward for this team and for this effort to get that to be successful. And we'll definitely let city staff know if we see anything that's giving us concern on that score. But when we put where we're at today, we believe we'll be highly competitive.
Great, thank you. Yeah, that was really just the funding package. Yeah. You know, knowing it's going to work. And we have it all figured out by the time we have to have it figured out. Yeah. So that's my concern at this point. I mean, your presentation about what it's going to be and what we're going to have is, you know, spot on to what we want. So, the one other thing I did somebody mentioned was solar panels, and that is a yes or it's a maybe at this point.
That's a good question. So it's I don't, off the top of my head, I don't recall if that was in our estimate from the contractor. Kevin, I don't know if you remember that off the top of your head. Is it?
Yeah. Okay. Yes, that was the plan over the 3- and 4-story buildings to the south.
Okay. And part of the reason I just wanted to confirm that is, so for us, generally, we're adding at this point in where we're at as a company in development, we are adding solar to all of our projects. We also have been very successful working with PGE, which I'm not sure if they're at this location, but also Energy Trust of
Pacific
Oregon.
Power. Yeah, Pacific Power.
Okay, so Pacific Power doesn't have the same program PGE does for solar, but between working with those utilities and partners, we have figured out in our development that it's very worth it, and especially with our sustainability and resiliency goals. So I knew we wanted them and would work to get them. I'm glad to see that Kevin's reminding me that we actually already have them in the budget that we proposed.
Great, thank you. Any other questions? Any other hands up or? No, great, all right. Thank you so much. I'm sure you will have numerous touch points along the way. Did you have anything you wanted to, I'm trying to see if anyone on the screen, Joel, Sergio, anyone else? No? Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
your presentation.
Bye.
All right. We have our next item this evening is a public hearing. But Kevin's back up here to take us through that. An annexation by John and Courtney Hasselback. Should I read the script now, or do you want to? Okay, I'll go ahead and read the script. All right. This is the time scheduled for the public hearing on the annexation by John and Courtney Hasselback, file number 2021-19. The applicant's parcel is located at the northeastern corner of the intersection of Frankton Road and West Prospect Avenue. And other properties affected by this annexation are located on West Prospect Avenue. The affected parcels currently are zoned urban low-density residential, urban growth area UR1, and will be designated urban low-density residential R1 following annexation. A quorum of the council is present, and I'll now ask all councilors to disclose any ex parte contact, conflicts of interest, and bias in this matter. Megan or Mark? Okay.
So it's, well, I guess I'll just disclose. So I work for Farmers Irrigation District, which is obviously an overlapping district. I did review this as my job at Farmers, but there was no information provided to me for that review that isn't in the packet. And there's no actual conflict of interest because there's no financial impact to me.
Okay.
I have none.
Councilor Rivera?
Madam Mayor, I have none.
Councilor Cunahan?
Mayor, I have none.
And Councilor Mehta?
I have none.
Councilor Haney?
I don't believe I have any. I'm not familiar with this project. Thank you.
Okay. And I have never had any contact, no ex parte contact or conflicts of interest for myself. Would anyone in the audience like to question any counselor on any disclosure, ex parte contact, bias, or conflict of interest, or otherwise challenge the participation of any member of council? How do we check for that, Jen? Is there anyone on Zoom that would be raising their hand or?
Great question, Mayor. We sent notices to property owners within 250 feet of the site, invited them to the hearing tonight. They had an opportunity to either sign up in advance with the city recorder to get a link to be able to present testimony or to attend. And we heard from just two people, the applicant and his engineer.
Okay. All right, great. Would any counselor like to make a motion to disqualify any other counselor from hearing this application? Anyone? I've got everyone shaking their heads no on the Zoom. Okay. In tonight's hearing, we will use the following order of presentation. First, begin with the staff report, where the staff will describe the application before us. Secondly, applicants may present testimony. Thirdly, anyone in favor of the proposal may testify. Fourth, opponents to the proposal may present testimony. If there is opponent testimony, the applicants then have an opportunity to present final rebuttal. The applicants have the last word because an applicant has the burden of proving compliance with the mandatory approval criteria. After that, we will check to see if staff has any parting comments following the conclusion of all public testimony. And finally, after everyone interested in these matters has had a chance to testify, we will close the record and deliberate and render a decision this evening. So let's have the staff report.
Thank you again, Mayor McBride and councilors. The application before council tonight is strictly for an annexation. The applicants also submitted an application for a minor partition. These applications have been processed concurrently in accordance with procedures for quasi-judicial actions. The city's annexation process requires the Planning Commission to forward a recommendation to the City Council and for the City Council to make the final decision on an annexation. The Commission reviewed both applications at a public hearing on November 15th, 2021. The Commission approved the partition subject to conditions of approval and forwarded a recommendation of approval of the annexation to the City Council. Among other conditions, approval of the partition is contingent upon council approval of and completion of the annexation. Planning Commission's final order, which includes findings of fact and conditions of approval, was signed on December 9th, 2021, and is attached to ordinance number 2065 as Exhibit B. That begins on page 5 of tonight's council packet 2. The applicable criteria for the annexation include Hood River Municipal Code section 17.09.040 quasi-judicial actions, chapter 17.15 annexation policy. In addition, the annexation must be consistent with Oregon Revised Statute sections 222.111 through 222.183 annexation of contiguous territory. The annexation is proposed by John and Courtney Hasselbach to obtain sanitary sewer from the city in order to serve the site of the partition. This is consistent with Resolution 2016-25, which requires property to be annexed before extending or allowing connection to the city's sewer system. In order to qualify for annexation, property must be contiguous to the city limits. Property proposed to be annexed includes 8 parcels of land totaling approximately 3.95 acres, plus the West Prospect Avenue right-of-way. The privately owned parcels that are subject to the annexation include properties known as 3 North, 10 East, 34A, tax lots 1500, 1501, 1503, 1504, 1505, 1506, 1602, and 1604. These parcels are located adjacent to the north side of West Prospect Avenue, the east side of its cul-de-sac bulb, and 1 parcel is adjacent to May Street. A map of the annexation territory is attached to Ordinance 2065 as Exhibit A. That's on page 4 of tonight's council packet number 2. The city limits boundary abuts a portion of the east side of the annexation territory. As noted earlier by Mayor McBride, all affected properties currently are zoned urban low-density residential, that's UR-1, and will remain urban low-density residential upon annexation. All property affected by the annexation will be withdrawn from the West Side Fire Protection District in association with annexation, and all property will remain in the Ice Fountain Water District for potable water service. Farmers Irrigation District provides irrigation water to the site currently and submitted instructions to the applicant if they would like the new parcels to have farmers irrigation water. The applicant submitted consent to annexation agreements that were signed by previous owners of the affected properties in order to demonstrate conformance with a method of annexation under state law that is known as the triple majority. This is detailed in ORS 222.170 sub 1, which states, the legislative body of the city need not call or hold an election in any contiguous territory proposed to be annexed if more than half of the owners of the land in the territory, who also own more than half of the land in the contiguous territory and of real property therein, representing more than half of the assessed value of all real property in the contiguous territory, consent in writing to the annexation of their land. Attachment A.1, Exhibits 10 through 12 of the Planning Commission's final order detail the consent to annexation agreements that are being relied upon. The applicant also submitted a worksheet, it's attachment A.1, Exhibit 9 of the final order, summarizing how the annexation agreements demonstrate consistency with ORS 222.170 sub 1. Based on evidence submitted by the applicant and summarized in the final order, the Planning Commission forwarded a recommendation of approval of the annexation to council, subject to findings of fact and conditions of approval. In order to ensure consistency with the city annexation policy and city development standards, conditions of approval require the applicant to execute a contractually binding annexation agreement before council approves the ordinance annexing the land that is subject of the application. That is prior to the second reading of the ordinance. The annexation agreement was prepared by the city attorney and provided the applicant in mid-December. The agreement details requirements for city right-of-way dedication and for public and private improvements consistent with the findings and conditions that are in the final order. Again, the Planning Commission's approval of the 3-parcel partition is contingent upon completion of the annexation. After the commission made their decision on the partition and their recommendation on the annexation, I mailed another set of notices detailing the date and time of the council's hearing to all property owners affected by the annexation and to all properties within 250 feet of the annexation area. No written comments were submitted in response to the notice that we provided prior to tonight's hearing. The applicant, John Hasselbach, is available tonight. And with that, are there any questions of the council before we move forward with testimony?
I have just one question. This is only for annexation and not approval of partition, although they have applied for that.
That's correct. This tonight's hearing is exclusively for the annexation. The Planning Commission did approve the partition subject to approval of the annexation.
Okay, but that won't be coming to us, just the annexation.
That's what the ordinance is intended to do, is to finalize the annexation.
Thank you. All right. Thank you for that.
Mayor, can I just ask a quick question?
Oh, sure. Go ahead.
Thank you. So Kevin, I just wasn't entirely clear based on one of the whereas clauses, but if I'm understanding you correctly, once approved, all of these new parcels, of the parcels that I should say subject to this annexation, it will be contiguous. There's not going to be any island piece of Hood River outside the city. It's all will be contiguous if approved. Do I have that correct?
Councilor Haney, that is correct. The annexation will be contiguous to the city limits. The mapping that is in your packet is a little bit difficult to read at the scale that is drawn. There is some territory to the east of the site that will remain in the county's jurisdiction, but it will not be kind of encircled by the city limits.
I see. Well, because the first whereas clause says it's not contiguous, referencing 1501, but that's just because it hasn't happened yet?
That's correct.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Okay. So the next order of business is the applicants may present testimony. So I need to read this, some more of the rules here. Here are some of the basic rules for presenting testimony in tonight's hearing. Only present testimony in the order that I had recited earlier, and do so only at the podium or on your Zoom camera, if that's where you are. Begin with your name and mailing address. Please limit your testimony to the substantive issues and the principal approval standards in ORS 222 and Hood River Municipal Code 17.15. Failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence with sufficient specificity to allow us or the parties to respond to the issue will preclude an appeal to the City Council or Land Use Board of Appeals based on that issue. Failure by the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues related to proposed conditions of approval with sufficient specificity to allow us to respond to the issue will preclude an action for damages in circuit court. Finally, we may set time limits on the presentation of testimony tonight, although there is no limit on written argument that may be submitted. And I don't know, we have the applicants, and how many, do we know how many people want to testify?
Right now, it's my understanding we have the applicant standing by as well as the applicant's engineer. We didn't receive a response from anyone who received notices. So I don't believe, and there's nobody in the audience here tonight, so I don't believe we
Okay.
have anyone else who wants to submit testimony.
Okay, all right. Seeing that we have very, just a couple people, I think that we could, allow up to 10 minutes for each one if you need that long. I mean, if you need 2 minutes, just take 2 minutes. But if you need up to 10 minutes, with only having 2 different people for the hearing, I think that would be fine. So let's go ahead and let the applicant, the Hasselbachs, testify first.
Raise hand.
I think we're unmuted.
Take my hands.
You're unmuted.
Oh, I'm there. Okay. Yeah, hi, my name is John Hasselbach, and I'm the applicant of this petition. I don't have I don't have anything additional to add. Kevin did a great job giving an overview of the application. So actually, one thing I do have to add. So the property, the motivation or the rationale is for the annexation petition is to obtain sanitary sewer for an additional home. One thing I do want to add: my property already is currently being served by city sanitary sewer, and so this application is merely bringing that service back into the city, and that's all. I don't have any, and I also don't have any objections to the staff report. So I guess I could end my time there. Thank you.
Thank you. And then does Elizabeth Betts want to testify?
Sure, I could talk for about a minute. Between Kevin's great summary and John, I don't have a whole lot more to say. My name is Elizabeth Betts. I'm a civil engineer at Klein and Associates, 1411 13th Street in Hood River. And really the whole trigger for this annexation was the sanitary sewer. Initially, this was proposed back in 2016. Our clients took it to the county as a partition under county zoning. And after, I think a few months after the pre-app, the city passed the ordinance that sanitary services would require annexation to the city. So they're back, and that's what is this annexation is about, is just so that they can obtain the sanitary services for their partition. I'm happy to answer any questions, as I'm sure John is happy to as well, if anybody has any.
I don't think so. Any questions? Thank you so much for testifying.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. And then I don't think we have anyone else on. Is that correct? That wants to testify in any way? All right. So we don't have anyone else in favor. We don't have any opponents. The rebuttal, no. Okay. So staff, do you have any parting comments?
Just I'd like to thank the Hasselbachs for their patience through this process.
All right. So it looks like everyone has testified that wanted to have a chance to do so. So we will close the record and we will go ahead and deliberate and render a decision this evening. So if Kevin, if you want to just stay at the podium in case we have any questions during deliberations, that would be great. Thanks. All right. Does anyone want to start? Mark, you want to start?
Just one real quick. What I read in the packet was that the Planning Commission thought it was clean and didn't have any objections to the annexation. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Megan, thoughts?
I mean, yeah, base level, it seems like the staff report and the planning commission's deliberations and conclusions seem reasonable and seems like a minimal to, I mean, no negative impact on the city. And I certainly agree with all of those findings.
Okay, Eric?
I just had a question for Kevin. I want to make sure I'm understanding correctly that by granting this annexation, if that's the vote, that doesn't annex anyone else's property in the area other than the applicant, right? This doesn't sort of have a carryover impact, and now this area is also annexed, or that, is that correct?
The annexation includes the applicant's property as well as 7 additional privately owned properties and the West Prospect Avenue right-of-way. So those are depicted in a map labeled Exhibit B to the ordinance, and that can be found on page 4 of tonight's council packet number 2. So yes, the annexation does affect property that is not owned by the applicant.
Okay, I had assumed that those other parcels were owned by the applicant for some reason. So they're owned by other people.
That's correct, yes. And the applicant is relying on consent to annexation agreements that were recorded years ago when those parcels were established in order to provide property owner consent and meet the triple majority requirements under state law.
I see. And would those other property owners have received notice of this hearing tonight?
Yes, all affected property owners affected by the annexation, as well as their neighbors within 250 feet of them, received notice. In fact, they've received 2 notices so far, one in advance of the Planning Commission's hearing and another in advance of the council's hearing.
Thank you.
Jessica?
Nothing for me. It's pretty straightforward. Thank you.
Tim?
Similar. It doesn't seem like there's anybody opposed to it, and I think the staff and the applicants have done a good job. And the planning commission, of course.
And Gladys?
Yeah, no questions from me. Same comments as Councillor Cunahan.
All right. I think this has been thoroughly vetted, gone through all the correct procedures. And I think we should approve it. Any additional questions, or do I have a motion? There's a motion on page 25.
I move that the subject property is annexed into the city and withdrawn from the West Side Rural Fire Protection District, consistent with the Planning Commission's recommendation. And I move that we read ordinance number 2065 for the first time by title only.
Okay, I have a motion. That's okay, Tim. I have a motion by Councilor Rivera and a second by Councilor Cunahan to move that the subject property is annexed into the city and withdrawn from the West Side Rural Fire Protection District, consistent with the Planning Commission's recommendations, and also move that we would read ordinance 2065 for the first time by title only. Any additional discussion on the motion? All right. All those in favor say aye.
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 Chair votes aye. Any abstentions? Any nays? All right, pass unanimously. Thank you, Kevin. All right. We're good. Work session. We'll open the work session. There is nothing under our work session this evening. Anything that we are going to be adding? Abigail?
No, Mayor.
Okay. So we'll adjourn the work session. We don't have any items. We'll open the regular council meeting. Agenda additions or corrections? Nothing. Okay. Consent agenda. We have council meeting minutes, taxi licenses, and resolution which just with some new descriptions under the eminent domain for right-of-way on acquisition of Cascade and Rand intersection. Does anyone need to abstain from our consent agenda? Okay. Do I have a motion?
Actually, I had a question on the taxi licenses. The staff recommendation includes discussing the taxi rates. And I don't know if we're supposed to do that now.
Oh, we were supposed to review the rates, the taxi rates. Is that what you're saying?
I'm asking if that was how I read the staff report.
Thank you for the question, Counselor. I'm checking to see if Will is online to answer, or Jen. I think Jen pulled out a microphone for just in case. All right, Will, can I call on you, please?
Yeah, I think this probably shouldn't have been on consent because the resolution 2019 does ask for council to review the rates annually. One thing, as we were building this packet item, made me think about whether or not the council may want to revisit that policy, because it's, as we've seen tonight, it's a bit awkward to kind of take this one fee in isolation where we have, 500 lines of fees. And maybe this one's best to be rolled into the consolidated fee schedule, and the maximum rates just increased by inflation unless there's some other reason that comes to the city council's attention. I think there was a notion when this resolution was passed that they needed to increase in 25-cent or 50-cent increments. But really that's completely up to the taxi cab drivers. They don't need to charge the prescribed maximum rates. They can charge whatever rates they think is best for their business model, which probably would be in 25 to 50-cent increments. So that's just one thing that I would recommend, but the standing policy and resolution is to have the council revisit this annually.
Well, when do we look at our fee schedule? I can't remember normally.
Usually it's the second meeting in January or first meeting in February. So it'll be the next time that you meet or the time after that. I believe the inflation data for 2021 is going to be coming out in the next week. And that's kind of what we need in order to move forward that house cleaning item.
So if we went ahead and just approved the consent agenda, it would leave the rates as they are now, and we could look at those when we look at all our other fees within the next month.
Correct.
Or so. Okay. If people are okay with that.
I mean, that seems reasonable.
Pardon?
Oh, sorry. I'm just going to mumble at you. That seems reasonable.
Okay. All right.
In that case, I move to approve the consent agenda.
Okay. I have a motion to approve the consent agenda by Councillor Saunders.
I'll second it since my mic is on.
And Councillor Sam Miller has seconded that. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Abstentions? Nays? Okay, unanimous approval of the consent agenda. Regular business items. Nothing on that. City recorder.
I would move we read ordinance 2065 for the first time by title only.
We have a motion to read ordinance 2065 by title only by Councillor Saunders.
I'll second that.
Councillor Sam Miller seconded.
Yes.
Is
We
somebody?
can't hear her.
We can't hear.
Can you hear her now?
Can you hear me now? Okay, good. Councillor Rivera,
Aye.
Councillor Haney,
Aye.
Councillor Saunders,
Yes.
Councillor Coonahan,
Aye.
Counselor Meta,
Aye.
Your Honor.
Yes.
Ordinance 2065, an ordinance proclaiming annexation of certain contiguous territory located within the urban growth boundary and withdrawing the same territory from the west side rural fire protection district. Hasselbeck.
All right. Is that all you need from us this time? Okay. All right. Mayor call. A few different things. Our city manager, Abigail, emailed everyone just a small informational piece on a homeless project that is being proposed by the state legislature. And so this is being coordinated through Mid-Columbia Community Action Council. And it's Hood River, Wasco, and Sherman counties, I believe. There's the legislature is putting together a package, and I believe that there's going to be 6 territories, 6 regions, I call them, and most of them will go to larger metropolitan. That these funding buckets of around $1 million going to go probably to bigger metropolitan areas, but Kenny LaPointe from Mid-Columbia Community Action Council said, you know, that's not right. We need some money out here too in these smaller communities. So he has put together a proposal for the 3 different counties to go together and included the city of Hood River and the city of the Dalles to have us added in for the potential of getting $1 million for a pilot project. And so I just wanted to let people know, I mean, this is a, fantastic opportunity. We've been talking about affordable housing and, problems finding places for people that are houseless. So this is a great opportunity for us to band together with others that are close to us to put something together. And so this is a fast track thing because the legislation is happening right now, ASAP. And so they just would like a letter of support saying, yeah, we think this is a great idea. Megan, did you have a question?
I mean, obviously very excited. Would love to bring money here. I guess I'm wondering, is there any detail about what the money is specifically for around, houseless folks, or what services it can cover?
So I don't know that that it's really super specific at this point. I think it's pretty general. I don't know that the language is set in stone even yet, but I know that I'm pretty sure it's going to be $1 million. And that's kind of all I know about it right now. Do you know anything else about it, Abigail?
No, thank you for the question, Counselor. The one other piece I think is important is all of the projects are city-county coordination projects. So I think it's really that demonstration of trying to get different parts of government who have different roles to be able to organize. So in which I think this area is probably way ahead of the game. But that is a unique feature about this program. But other than that, we don't have a lot of details right now. As soon as I know more, I'll certainly share it.
And we're a partner. It's not coming to us. The money would be going to Mid-Columbia Community Action, but it would be used within our county, within our city, or a portion of it. And so they would be partnering with us, saying, what do you think's a good idea? Or we've got a great idea. What do you guys think? Do you want it used here? Kind of thing. So it's a partnership. Did you have a question, Mark?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask staff whether we have any concerns of bandwidth required to administer it. It sounds like a good idea, but if it's going to eat our lunch, it's best to know about it.
Thank you, Counselor. I think I'm always concerned about bandwidth. As Mayor said, I think we are a junior partner in this project. MCAC will really take the lead. And then counties, and then the cities will be kind of the last piece of this. So I don't anticipate it being a major workload for city staff, but we'll certainly be monitoring that as it goes on.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I've got a couple other things. Energy Council meeting this week. We're going to start our planning for our work plan for the next 3 years. And I am not going to be able to be at the work planning session next month. And so Tim has graciously said he would sit in on that. Also, Haley from the city and Abigail are going to be in on that work planning session next month. And I think Tim was going to maybe try to come to the meeting later this week too, if possible, to kind of get a step ahead on kind of what we're thinking about on the planning for the Energy Council. Bi-state working group meets next week, but we are in the process of meeting with legislators right now from Oregon. The Washington contingent of that group has met with Washington legislators in the last month. And in the next 2 weeks, I believe I have 5 different meetings that we'll be meeting with legislators on Zoom to pitch our, we need infrastructure money for the bridge to start some engineering. We're going to ask for $20 million for that. So, it's a small amount compared to what we need, which is, $500 million. But that's what's going on with that right now. City Hall will be closed next Monday for Martin Luther King holiday. And the Planning Commission meeting that is normally on Monday will be moved to Tuesday because of that. And then an exciting piece of news that now can be public, that has been publicized, is that it's not the fruit company, but the people that own the fruit company have bought the railroad. They have bought the rail. They are buying the rail and also the station and the property downtown. So they had made that public today. So you guys can know what that is. And they have actually, I believe, written a letter to the county planning department today, asking for an initial meeting on some ideas they have for some things that they want to do to partner, with us, and just some ideas. But they, they're in the county. The railroad goes right by the fruit company, and so they have some fun ideas that they hope will be able to come to fruition in the next few years. So that's pretty exciting. That's all I have. Megan?
Yeah, I don't have much. I did just follow up from business from the audience today, and Andrew's concerns around the Blumenauer proposals. Did just want to let you all know, I think I'm going to write a letter individually. I share some of those concerns about increased management demands with no funding and resources or staff to actually meet those, which seems like a real risk to the ability of the Forest Service to implement or approve partner projects or manage for wildfire risk, and kind of meet the demands that I think we as a community have for them. So I want to kind of express that of like what is really seems needed for the local community is that there actually is staff and resources to implement current management plans, let alone new ones. So I just wanted to share that with you all.
Okay, Mark.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess I wanted to ask if, as Omicron is coming our way, are we ready as an organization? What should we be thinking about as an organization to make the transition to higher numbers as smooth as possible? Obviously, my advice to both people listening is to take it seriously, wear your masks, distance, all the things that Gladys will remind us of it. But just as, are we going to continue to meet? Are we going to, is it business as regular, or do we do something different? And no answer needed right now, but I think it benefits us to think about it.
Thank you, Councilor. I will note that I think the latest from the Oregon Health Authority has been no change in the guidance around gatherings, except to distance, be vaccinated, and wear masks. So
and
definitely monitoring that.
I support following OHA guidelines too. And then the only other thing I can think of bringing up is that yesterday's radio show Freakonomics on OPB was exceptionally entertaining and strong. It was by this economics Nobel laureate talking about the theory of nudging behaviors you want versus demanding or requiring behaviors that you want. And he was great. I think I'm going to buy the book. So
Is that a podcast? Can we?
I'm sure it's a podcast.
Oh, great. Okay. It sounds entertaining. I'd like to listen to it. All right. Let's see. Gladys?
No comments from me, Mayor, but it's exciting to see that Councilor Zandmiller and I have the same and similar podcasts.
Oh, Tim?
Nothing for me, Mayor.
Jessica?
I will say first, thank you to Will and Monica and all the financial staff for a great audit. I know that is a lot of work and good job. I also want to say thanks to the staff who worked so hard through the storm, the winter storm. And I know that's a lot of late nights, early mornings. And and I appreciate all your work to keep the city going. I'd heard today the county was down 6 of their 12 plow folks. And so that was some of the challenges they were facing. And I'm just grateful for the city. I was really sad to lose 2 of the trees in Jackson Park. So that was a bummer. And with my work hat on Mid-Columbia Economic Development District, we did submit some comments to Blumenauer on his but they're just through how it intersects with our work, mostly with transportation and economic development. We're working on a Gorge regional transit strategy, and they talk a lot about figuring out how to basically it's recreational access management in the scenic area, which, as we all know, can be extremely crowded. And so we were giving some comments on that. But one of the ones we also did talk about is how there needs to be more engagement with all of the local governments and entities. I feel like, and honestly, we've been talking with Blumenauer staff about this from a transportation standpoint for over a year now, and I've seen some draft concepts that are very detailed versus what they have put out right now is a 30,000 foot view. So maybe they have some detailed stuff on these other pieces. And, we've only seen the transportation one. So anyway, I do think that it's good to advocate for making sure that we all on the ground get to weigh in a little bit more. So thank you.
Thanks, Jessica. Eric?
Yes, on that very same point, I had a member of the building community voice some concern about the Blumenauer proposal potentially impacting water rights. And I haven't confirmed whether that's the extent to which that is a valid concern or not, but I think my point in mentioning that, and the concern about water rights was kind of in the large scale, municipal water rights potentially impacting long-term development, however, by potentially inadvertently restricting or somehow complicating the water rights. So, but the point is for me not to advocate that necessarily, other than to just echo what Jessica just said, and what I heard, I guess, Megan say as well, is that we should be in the loop here and considering presenting our comments to that proposal.
All right. Gladys?
Yeah, well, I mean, since 3 of our counselors have spoken about this, and Mayor, I know that you and I attended the county meeting where the county members themselves expressed similar interests. Does it make sense that we would write a letter as a council or no?
No, we weren't going to, I don't think we were going to write a letter as a council. I mean, that wasn't where people wanted to go when I brought it up before. So no, I mean, I wrote a personal letter, but no, everyone's kind of got different things going on with it. And I think the county was going to have Blumenauer's office staff talk to them and so they could ask some specific questions. I think that was the next step with them. And I don't know that they've done that yet. Their last meeting was postponed. And I
Yeah.
don't think they've had that meeting again yet now. So, but
Would
that's
it
what they were going to do.
Would it be possible that after they present to the county, if some council members aren't able to attend, that they could come and do so here? I guess the reason I'm bringing this up is that we all have constituents, whether that's within the city, within the county, and if there needs to be better ways for those individuals to give their input. And we know that creating an online survey or some sort of email creates a barrier for those who do not have the same level of access. So I guess I just maybe bringing up that point that our constituents aren't able to give their feedback or input as other community members are.
Yeah, and I think Blumenauer's office, that, you know, that is the only way Blumenauer's office has. That's the only thing they're doing at this point, other than, you know, this presentation I heard they were going to have at the county level.
I know they're presenting to the Gorge Commission tomorrow, but you know, I know that's hard for folks to jump on. I think they're going to be there like around 10. I guess one of the things that I personally found tricky too is that it talks about so many different things that it's hard to really focus on which one impacts the city that we would want to talk about. Which one are multiple ones. So I guess that's kind of the challenge of, a letter from the city versus, what I or, my employment can focus on that matters to me.
So I think to Kate's point of individually as counselors, we all probably have different opinions on the proposal as much as we understand it or there's no detail. But I am wondering if it's worth putting in some sort of comment of it would be really valuable for Blumenauer to actually come out to the community and present to community members who I don't think are super engaged in a online survey over the holidays as the worst possible time to do outreach. So I think it's something I'm hoping we could all agree on, that it is valuable for us to advocate for our constituents to say, yes, please come here in person to a place and at a time or multiple times that would allow folks to engage with this. Feels like an ask that is something we could advocate for without getting into any details that I think we might not agree on. But I guess I'm wondering what other folks think of that.
Well said, Counselor.
That's a good idea. I mean, we could ask. I mean, they may not do it, but we could definitely ask. I mean, it seems like a good idea.
I mean, it's super early. I mean, we have decent contacts with the, senators' staffs, and we just don't have that yet for Representative Blumenauer. So I think it's, okay, you have a new district and there's these new cities, you should come out and at least at the staff level and meet with us and understand our issues and concerns and opportunities and stuff. So maybe it's just an invite to have staff come to a work session sometime.
Yeah, I think that'd be a good idea.
Sounds great. I will follow up.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Does anyone else have anything? All right. We are adjourned. It is 8:00. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you in a couple weeks. Somewhere, here, Zoom, wherever.